Well, finally we have engaged the good grace, and he has accepted he's accepted our invitation extended to Paul Tippett. Mr. Tippett is chairman of the board and chief executive officer of American Motors Corporation. How'd you like his job today? He appears, he steps before us today in certainly what has to be described as, in terms of dollars and jobs, etc., the biggest crisis facing the American automobile industry in its history. I don't think you're going to argue with those superlatives. Dealerships closing, layoffs, Japanese pressure, all of that. Steps forward now with someone from upstairs. You know, they're talking about you in the union.
I'm talking about them, too, of course.
I know. That's part of the problem, isn't it? You're really talking about each other and not to each other. They think you guys up there in the air-conditioned offices with your in basket and your out basket and all that paper shuffling are not making the same kind of sacrifice that you're asking them to make.
Well, I think that's natural for them to think that. It always seems like the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. That's a traditional American characteristic. The fact of the matter is, I think everyone is making sacrifices in this kind of market. Our dealers are making sacrifices. Some of them, unfortunately, are going out of business. Our suppliers are making sacrifices. They're cutting their prices to keep the automobile industry as profitable as it can be. Our salaried workers are making sacrifices. We've laid off 16 to 17% of our salaried workforce, which no one likes to do. And, of course, our hourly UAW people are making sacrifices. It's a tough period. We've got to all make sacrifices, and we've got to pull together.
Yeah, but, okay, everybody agrees. That sounds like the old Union Hall speech. All right. Except that it's not followed by any visible evidence of partnership. Let me just give you one example. This is a little Mickey Mouse, and I'm going to get a little clobbered. Ford is not going to be pleased with the point I'm making here, and I'm not suggesting this is Mount Sinai, but when Ford reached that agreement with the UAW, that was an historic agreement, those concessions. You know, this really, in the history of the American labor movement, we never even, the picture in the paper was two union guys, Doug Fraser and his vice president for, where was Chairman Caldwell?
I think, as a matter of fact, he was in the Far East trying to drum up some business at the time, but...
All right, anybody. Why can't we have, you know, the old, we're going to do this together kind of, we don't see that in your business.
I think that's true. I think we have not done as good a job in the past as we should of working together, but of course there hasn't been the common enemy to the degree there is now. There's nothing like a outside threat to pull a family together. And I think you're going to see a change in the adversarial relationship between management and labor. It's existed in the automobile business. It's always been at the bargaining table an adversarial role. That's what collective bargaining really is.
Right.
And Samuel Gompers said it when asked what labor wanted, and he said more. Well, that was great when there was a pie to divide up. The issue was who gets what part of the pie. Now there's no pie, there's just a tart.
Right. The grievance, though, has... The grievance, Mr. Tippett, has on the part of the union is that when there was a pie, you guys got most of it. And it was their sore feet, their sore back, their overtime, the pressure you put on them, more. You were selling these cars, you guys couldn't put them out fast enough, and you pressured the guys on the line, and the women as well, it didn't have to be good, it had to be Tuesday.
Well, I think that's a charge that's frequently made. There's some truth in it, and there's some obviously exaggeration in it. The fact of the matter is they shared pretty well in the pie. The average UAW worker earns $8 an hour more than the average U.S. worker in other industries.
I brought that up to the UAW in Detroit, and I almost stoned I needed a police escort to get out of town.
Nice to have you here today.
I'm pleased to be here. I'm grateful to be here. Let me tell you how they respond to that. One of the things they want you to know is that the Japanese auto companies are taking a lot better care of their workers in terms of benefits, job security, lifetime security, and all the rest of it than would be the case here. So that if you add up, factoring in inflation, and it is true the Japanese are able to bring a car here apparently for as much as $1,700 less production cost, even after you pay the shipping, then you guys can come out. They're saying that the Japanese are, in effect, in the long term, taking better care of their workers than are the management personnel here in America.
Yes, but I don't think if put to a vote that the UAW membership would agree to Japanese pay levels either. $8 an hour less than they're now making in return for some of those social concessions, such as a nice dining hall and recreation societies and that sort of thing. You have to understand that Japan is a planned society. They get together, they allocate markets, they decide who's going to do what to who. It's a very orderly way to do business. It would be against the law in this country to do it that way.
Are you satisfied with that we are getting the mea culpa that we just might be entitled to, not so much because we want you to squirm. listen, if you don't make it, we don't make it.
Right.
So this isn't about being vengeful. It's about attitudes and whether we can fix this. You and your brothers over there in Detroit, way up on top of those big buildings, have not acknowledged your own contribution to this crisis.
What do you think that contribution was?
You weren't fast enough in coming out with fuel-efficient cars. You pressured your dealers for volume rather than good service. And you make more money with your automatic sunroofs and your power windows than you do with your Pintos and your Le Cars. And all your marketing effort went into the big gas.
So can we take those one at a time?
Sure.
Okay. First, in terms of not moving fast enough with fuel-efficient cars, just before the Shah was toppled, Ford Motor Company was allocating V8s. People wanted V8s so badly they couldn't stand it because, you know, they just had to have a big, exciting car to drive. And Ford Motor Company was trying to sell small cars. I was there at the time. American Motors was trying to sell small cars. The fact of the matter was the gasoline prices were artificially depressed in this country. And because they were artificially depressed, people in this country did not want small cars. And contrary to some people's opinion, you cannot make people buy what they don't want. The Chevette, when it was introduced in 1976, which was the most fuel-efficient product sold in this country, was a disaster. It was being called an Edsel because they couldn't sell any. People in 1976 just didn't want a small car. Henry Ford suggested in 1974, for example, that we put a 10% tax on gasoline in this country so that people started to understand they must conserve gasoline and they should move to small cars.
And the reason we were selling VWs and Hondas at that time, buying them, was what?
10% of the market. Very small percent of the market at that time. Yes, they were being sold, but not nearly in the volume that they're now being demanded by the public. And what happened was, up to the point of the Shah's demise, people were just not buying small cars. They didn't want them. And so we as an industry were trying to deliver what the people said they wanted, and then all of a sudden, the pendulum swung dramatically the other direction. Fortunately, we had small cars in the works, because as you know, it takes 3 or 4 years to get a car from the design board to the showroom. And we had them started. We just couldn't bring them through fast enough at that point. So the market changed so dramatically on us. We had been screaming as an industry to please deregulate the cost and price of gasoline in this country. We should be paying more for it. We're paying below world market prices today. That's why we're importing so much oil. So we've just got to get on a realistic basis the way every other industrialized nation in the world has done. Then we'll be able to plan our market, deliver the cars people want.
It's hard to understand why an automotive mogul would want gas prices to go up.
Because we had a legislative act to contend with called EPCA, which was passed in 1976, which is essentially you have to sell so many of your cars at certain fuel economy levels, no matter whether the people want them or whether they don't. Well, when gas prices were very low, they didn't want them, and we couldn't sell them as an industry. And we said, we agree with the intent of reducing our dependence on foreign oil. It must be done for the country's benefit. But to do that, we've got to bring gasoline to realistic price levels, because people, this is a big country. We have big families. We have good roads. People will gravitate to big cars unless it's an economic reason not to.
Okay, this is a long way of saying, it's your fault, customer. We warned you. Boy, we knew it was happening. But you greedy folks had to have your big car, and you went out there against all our advice.
They weren't greedy. Gasoline was only 50 cents a gallon.
Well,
that's what people. That's what
they weren't greedy,
want.
but you're saying they were short-sighted. Is what you're saying.
They weren't short-sighted. We and our representatives and the Congress and perhaps the president were short-sighted in not moving to more realistic energy policy earlier.
All right. Okay. The record will show we still don't have the mea culpa from any representative of the boardrooms of the automotive industry.
I think there's plenty of blame to go around.
Okay, but that's a bromide. There's no information
including the news media.
Okay. All right. All right. Let me share with you, Mr. Tippett, see if you can tell me who said this. Is 5:45, Ron. I just want to show you a statement. You probably know who said this.
I hope I do.
All right, listen to this. This is a comment on American management. It's overstaffed. It concentrates on one-year goals, which is costly. It's not close enough to labor to understand labor's problems. It's insulated from what goes on in the world, even from what goes on at home. It's not as innovative in working on new ideas and generating money for research as the Japanese, the Germans, and I'll even include the Mexicans. I know Mexican businessmen that are a lot more efficient than many Americans. somewhat patronizing reference to the Mex. I'm sure President Portillo is going to be thrilled with that. Continuing. I don't think it's labor productivity that's the problem. It's management. And I speak as a former manager. Management has been too fat, dumb, and happy the past 10 years. Management hasn't been sharp enough or hungry enough or lean enough. No less a person than your present Secretary of Commerce, Malcolm Baldrige, said that. That's a Reagan administration official, duly authorized as the Secretary of Commerce, who gave you and your colleagues that kind of punch in the nose. Does he have a point?
Sure. I think you know, if you divide by 25%, multiply by 25%, he's probably right. I think there has been excessive concentration in the short term by U.S. industry, especially in the car business. I think there has been tremendous pressure on managers to deliver in the short term. There's no question about that. We do have stockholders, however, to please. In Japan, for example, the stockholder is satisfied with a 1% return on his investment. That's what many Japanese, the leading Japanese companies, make in terms of return on their sales and investment. In this country, that's Bush League. You've got to deliver more than that. And I think there's always a premium to be paid for delivering in the short term. You're paying a premium to get that short-term profit, potentially sacrificing some long-term profit.
Yeah.
I do think it's easy to be somewhat masochistic about this. I mean, we do have the strongest economy in the world. Prior to this, the current economic problems that beset the U.S. automobile industry, we were, without question, the leading producers of automobiles and trucks in the world.
You gave the world automotive engineering.
We gave the world's automotive engineering. The same guys, you know, are here now who were here then. They didn't all turn stupid overnight. They may have been stupid before. That's possible, I suppose. I think we've got to say that many things have happened in the last 2 or 3 years that make the situation clearly different from 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago. We've been in the third year of a recession, which has really never happened in the last 30 or 40 years in this country. Interest rates are staying at 16 or 17%. We face some problems in this business we just didn't face before. But in terms of Secretary Baldrige's charges, I think they are true, partially. I think there has been an obsession with the short term. We've got to do more long-term planning.
Your fiscal quarter vision.
Is that a good enough mea culpa?
Well, okay. Listen, I'm not here to demand that you wear a hair shirt. I'm just saying that if you are ever to get a cooperative partnership with the thousands of men and women, proud Americans all, who work for you in Kenosha and other places around the world, it seems to me that what we got to have is just a little bit more of a specific analysis of management's responsibility. You guys have the power. You push all the buttons. Yes, there's enough sin to go around. Yes, labor has, in many arenas, not only in your industry and others, become just a little muscular and arrogant and short-sighted themselves. But you guys have the power. You're the ones that are really pushing most of the buttons, and you've got to assume some responsibility for where we are.
Of course we do.
Okay. All right. Well, we won't beat this to death. Let me just give them some figures now, just show them where you are. Total sales, 1981. General Motors, look at this, $62,699,000,000 worth of sales. Ford, 38.2. Chrysler, 10.8. And this is 1981. And AMC, the American automotive baby, 2.5 billion, right. Okay. You may be real glad you're small. I mean, you know, here are the losses. General Motors in 81 showed a profit of $33 million. All right? That's got to be wrong. We need another figure on that. It's more than 33. It seems to me it was 333 million. In 81? Well, it was 333 million last year. I mean, they made more money last year than they did the preceding year?
They made $333 million in 81 net after tax.
Okay, so we need another...
For the year.
We need another three.
They made money.
With apologies to General Motors, they're doing much better than what our figure here indicates. These, however, are correct. All right, well, we're focusing here on losses. Notice that your company, in 1981, lost $136.5 million. Chrysler lost $476 million. Ford, over $1 billion. This is where you are. Now, I'm almost finished. This one's gonna, here's our next visual. The chairman of the board of Chrysler in 1980 made $360,000. Mr. Iacocca wants you to know that for a period of 1 year, very recently, he reduced his own salary to $1, and he is on record as saying that his salary now is being donated to charity. Now, there's no reason for us not to take him at his word. Gerald Meyers, the man who you replaced, in 1980, had a reported prospectus published salary of $385,000. The record should show that that salary was offered to Mr. Meyers in a year when your company lost $197 million. Caldwell, $400,000, and Murphy of GM, $400,000. Now, I don't think anybody's going to sit here and say that the jobs you folks hold are so important that you're not entitled to 6 figures. But the union guy wants to know, how come if your company loses $197 million, your chairman makes $385,000?
Well, to start off with, I can't speak for Mr. Meyers, but I can speak for myself. In the automobile business, and it's been traditionally this way, the compensation for not just the chairman, but a lot of the executives is composed of 2 pieces, salary and bonus. And the bonus is a very important part of the total compensation. In years when there's no money made or losses occur, or when money may be made but not enough, there's no bonus. And Caldwell didn't get a bonus this year.
It is true. They used to be up there around 9.
And Tippett didn't get a bonus, and Iacocca didn't get a bonus, and Roger Smith didn't get a bonus, and that tends to be half of their income. Now, the fact of the matter, well, the fact of the matter is that key people in the automobile business, and forget the chairman for a second, maybe we ought to all work for $1. Don't take that too seriously. But we compete for talent like everybody else.
Right.
And if we don't pay the going rate to our good people, they'll leave the automobile business and go do something else. And if we ever needed our good people, we need them now.
Yes.
And we've got to keep them.
And obviously you have to be described as one of those good people. Nobody's doing you any favors. You clearly have a track record in business. You were with Ford Philco. You worked for the Singer Corporation, didn't you? The sewing machine people. So clearly you are a talented man. So nobody's denying that, and we're glad you're there. I promise you the people who work for AMC are glad you're there. And nobody is suggesting that you ought to be, on food stamps. That's not the point. But you heard this audience. The public relations damage that's inflicted on you, especially in the hearts and minds of the blue-collar people who make your cars, is almost insurmountable when it comes to trying to reach an agreement across a bargaining table.
Well, I don't think that we have not been asked by anybody in the UAW to lower the management salaries. They know we've got to compete for talent with everybody in the United States and abroad, for that matter. We have a lot of foreign managers who can go work in Switzerland or Germany or Japan, for that matter. Mm-hmm. And we've got to keep those good people, and we've got to pay what the going rate is, whether we like it or not. Just the way we've got to keep talented machinists, we've got to keep talented UAW people in the plant. You may recall when Chrysler froze the salaries of some of their skilled tradespeople, they started losing them. They had to reinstate those salary cuts, and the UAW agreed to it because all their skilled, talented people were leaving, going elsewhere. And it's that kind of mobility that forces you to pay what the going rate is. And automotive salaries are significantly below many other industries.
We are in Chicago with Paul Tippett, chairman of the board of the American Motors Corporation.
I just don't understand. I mean, I'm not part of management, and I don't work for any car corporation, but I get really testy when people say that the American buyer wants this. The American buyer wants quality for a reasonable price, which is why the American buyer went to Japan for their cars. Right. When we went shopping for a car, we looked for the lowest price, but a car with a good track record. That's why we bought a Toyota Corolla. It was the cheapest car. It has had very little maintenance. Now, I'm not saying that I feel good about buying a Japanese car. I'd love to buy an American Motors Gremlin, but I see a lot of them sitting, rusting in little piles in junkyards. I see a lot of Toyotas and a lot of Volkswagens driving down the road.
But you see a lot of other cars rusting.
This is true.
And it's Japanese as well.
That's right, granted.
Okay. What do you think?
I don't know whether that was a question or a speech. I'm having a little... all I can say to that, I guess, is that we've got to earn your support. There's no question about it. No one that I know of in this industry is in favor of keeping out foreign automobiles. We've got to compete with them head on, because we'll never do it any other way. Right now, with a tremendous change in the way the market's been operating in favor of small cars, we have been retooling. The rest of the U.S. industry has been retooling at incredible expense, $40 billion. And I think you'll find that the U.S. cars made today match Japanese cars in quality, in fit and finish, and especially in durability. As a matter of fact, U.S. cars last longer than Japanese cars. If you look at the scrap rates for U.S. cars versus Japanese cars, they last about 50% longer before they are scrapped, number one. Number two, as the large number of tests that the Highway Traffic Safety Administration have shown, U.S. cars are safer, and that's something to think about when you're driving around. One of the ways the Japanese get good fuel economy is to make their cars very, very light. That's great for fuel economy. It's not so great for some other things.
Yes.
You know, I want to know what you mean by making sacrifices. You're telling us that management and all of you are making sacrifices and that there's no more pie. And when I read that for the first time in history, I think possibly it didn't even happen during the Depression, that the blue-collar families are going into the soup kitchens for a meal so that they could eat, then I wonder what you're talking about when you say sacrifices, that you're making them too, and that there's no more pies left. I'm afraid you have your pies in your freezer.
But the point should be made that there are white-collar folks, and they're watching you now, who are out of work in the auto industry.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Their candidates
Showing up in the soup kitchens for the first time with their families, and this has never happened before. They have never asked for a handout, and for the first time, they need a meal, and they're walking into the soup kitchens. And I want to know how you feel about it, what your meals are like, and what sacrifices you've made in this kind of a situation, you as management.
Well, first, no one likes the situation where people are unemployed. Contrary to some people's opinion, management does not revel in having layoffs. We want to keep people working. We're employees of ours just the way they're citizens of your community. We are doing our best to try and get this car market going again. The way to get those people out of the soup kitchens is to start selling more products, be more competitive, lower our costs, do all the things we're trying to do. And until we get fully competitive in the world markets, we're going to have problems in this industry, and that's what's going on right now. So the only way I know how to get them out of the kitchens...
Well, they're still in the soup kitchen, but what would you have him do? He's entitled, is he not, to the unusually high salary because of the responsibility? You're not going to deny him that.
No, when you're talking about salaries and how they affect the human interest and the human condition here.
Did you make that same speech to anybody who's employed today making money?
No, I'm afraid not. Well,
if you're making $50,000 a year, and some people still are, why, if we adopt your position here, that person has a responsibility to give more than he otherwise might to ensure that people are fed and not malnourished?
but he's not making sure that people are fed on this great salary.
What?
But his tax bracket makes sure he pays a good percentage of social support.
So, what we're talking about...
All I can say is really, to sum it up, is the most important thing I can do to try and get people out of those soup kitchens is to create jobs, and that's what we're working like crazy to do in our company, is to get things going again in this industry and in this country so we can put people back to work.
Yes. Mr. Tippett, you've given us a lot of hokum. You've passed the buck to the consumer and to the workers, and the fact of the matter is that the blame lies entirely with you. You and your company and other automobile companies spent billions of dollars advertising these gas guzzlers, building obsolescence into your cars.
Well,
You can't lay it exclusively at his door now. Come on.
I don't think what's good for AMC is good for the American people. Charlie Wilson said that back in 1950.
He said it about General Motors, yes.
do you think we're capable of making people buy things they don't want to buy?
Well, if you can't do a better job than you have, what are you drawing your big salaries for? You say you need to get the best brains. Well, if that's the best your brains can do, then I think we need different kind of brains in the automobile industry.
A couple of things. Mr. Tippett has come a long way without my defending him. But he wants you to know that he just got the job. I mean, he has been president, but he's just assumed his top title of CEO. And I don't know whether we're going to get anywhere name-calling like this. And the thing that makes me nervous about the nature of your speech here is that I'll never get another CEO on my program.
You told me they were all going to be friendly.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask why, instead of making 20 and 25 models every year and changing them every year, why can't they concentrate on 2 or 3 good cars every year and compete with the foreign market?
That's a very good question, and that's happening. Let me give you a couple of examples. General Motors used to have what they call 9 different platforms. That is 9 basic body shells for automobiles. They'll be cutting those back to 5. Chrysler used to have 5. They'll be down to 2. Ford was at, I think, 5 or 6. They'll be down to 3. So we are, as an industry, trying to simplify the model lines, offer fewer but better models because of the tremendous costs involved in changing them now. And I think we're trying to respond to what the market now says it wants.
And we'll be back. Here's a little of American Motors history. See that again. Oh, you left me. Hang on just a second. Mr. Tippett will tell us what year and the make of that car.
That's a 1948 Hudson, and I must admit I was briefed in advance.
That's on it. Is the caller there?
Yes, I am.
You wanted to say what?
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. If Mr. Tippett needs to defend his salary, and I, for one, do not think he needs to, if he needs to defend his salary in relation to the unemployment in the automobile industry, I would like to know how the entertainment industry defends the highest salary of the stars in television, as well as in the theaters, in relation to the high unemployment in the entertainment industry. So the question's for you.
Right. As a matter of fact, the unemployment in our own industry, in my own union, is significant. The woman asks, how can you put somebody on and embarrass them with the notion if you don't turn the... I think you make a good point. You got something to add to that? All right. Yes, ma'am. Come on. Yes.
It's my only chance, and I've got to take it. It's not directly to add to that. It's a question more or less concerning a couple of shows ago. Back about a year or so ago, they introduced a book from the government that was called the New Car Book. It was not the revised edition, the first one. They also showed this car on TV. All I want to know is, if that's a year ago, how close is your company coming to even introducing a car that's similar to it? It's supposed to be ideal. Safety, construction, durability, everything. Is there anything being done?
I think you're referring to the ESV, the experimental safety vehicle.
Yes.
The one that looked like a tank. Kind of. Right.
Well,
it was designed for optimum safety, not necessarily optimum fuel economy. Obviously, we're trying to do everything we can to bring together the most effective package between fuel efficiency, safety, performance, comfort, and so forth. Many new safety features have been incorporated in automobiles. You know, collapsible steering wheels, dual braking systems, radial tires, laminated windshields. Those kinds of things have been built into the products, and we are looking at side guard door beams to protect you in case of a side impact. All that has been added in the last 10 to 15 years.
you have a device which polls show that the majority of the American people approve. You have at least 3 major insurance companies which are on record as saying they will offer discounts or reductions in premium prices if this is part of the equipment. You've got the testimony of the AAA supports it, hardly a radical government-sponsored organization. It's called the airbag, and you won't put them in your cars. Not only you, but none of the American companies. And the statistics or the research shows that you can cut highway deaths and injuries in half if you can get them in.
Well, first, I don't know where you got the research. The research I've seen suggests that the majority of people do not want airbags installed in their cars at a cost of $400 to $500. Secondly, there's far from conclusive evidence that they increase the safety in case of a crash. In absolute head-on collisions, they do. In side crashes, they frequently cause additional injuries. And I think there's a lot more work needs to be done. Of course, the insurance companies, of course, don't care about the price of the car. They're interested in minimizing claims, principally. And I think they'd be in favor of it. But the people who have to pay for that, should have some kind of vote.
But Ed Cole supported the airbag, an engineer who came up through the ranks of General Motors to become its top executive, supported the airbags. In other words, Mr. Tippett, I'm just merely saying that within your own industry there's evidence. Your own tests show that these things work.
We totally support seat belts, mandatory seat belts. We support mandatory seat belt laws. There's nothing that we know of that a airbag will solve that a seatbelt won't if you're wearing the seatbelt. And certain states have it mandatory. Canada, for example, has mandatory seatbelt wearing as a country. I think we wore our seatbelts, as we should, that will solve 95% of the problem.
If you offered, say, it's called the Fuego. Is that the new?
It's a new Renault product, right.
Yes, or Renault/AMC product.
Right.
Okay. Or I don't know where you're going to put, I don't know what the name of your major car is going to be, but if you would tell the American people that now remember, you're dealing with a parental community that hears sirens every night. There's nothing like the terror the parent feels with the kid out in the car who's smoking what they drink. It's terrifying. Every parent knows that feeling. If you offered a car, one of your car lines, which guaranteed as standard equipment the presence of the airbag, with real live dramatic tests on television, with celebrities crashing into walls, or whatever you could do, whatever your agency could do, I'm saying I bet you could triple the sales of that vehicle.
That's an interesting observation. Maybe we'll try it.
You don't think so, though? I don't think.
No, we don't, Phil, principally because they don't do anything that a good seatbelt won't do. And if people will fasten their seatbelts and wherever they can do it one of our problems in this country is we're making new cars, too expensive for people to buy. We're adding cost to them, this and that, and we've got to keep the cost down. The best way to reduce emissions in this country is to sell new cars, for example, with better emissions equipment than old cars, but they cost so much people aren't buying them.
All right, the airbag supporters want you to know that the airbag saves money. Saves money at the hospital, on the insurance, at the lawyer's fees, the court costs. It's a point for them, yeah.
Mr. Tippett, I'd like to know how the regular, person like us sitting out here in audience, what kind of ideas can we give, or do you use of us in designing your cars? Like our consumer opinion.
Well, we run consumer opinion panels, clinics with consumers every year. We must talk to 15,000, 20,000 consumers a year. We show them new products we're thinking about, new features we're thinking about. We say, do you like this? Don't you like it? Sit in it. Is the seat right? Does the rear view mirror in the wrong spot? All those kinds of things. So, and all different parts of the country, California, Chicago, New York, to get the different regional points of view. So we're trying to, obviously, think of what you want all the time.
Is the caller there? Mr. Tippett on the line.
Hi, Mr. Tippett?
Yes.
I feel I'm sick and tired of the unions, number one, and I feel that the unions have ruined the automobile business.
Yeah, the unions too, are you? Yeah, you feel what?
I feel that the unions have ruined the automobile business. Number one, for the first time in the history of the United States, they have finally conceded to take a cut in salary. And I strongly feel that President Reagan stop importing foreign products and Americans buy American products.
Yep.
And if a company
You think that's what we ought to do, huh? In other words, so let's, I tell you what.
Let them keep it south and
Yeah.
don't bring it back into our country.
Right. Let's tell the San Francisco 49ers they can't play this year either because they won last year. They won the Super Bowl.
They're closing down factories in the United States, Phil, and taking them where there's cheaper labor.
You got a point there.
Well, the problem is the only real job guarantee, the only real job security that's available is to be competitive. If you're not competitive, ultimately the job is going to go somewhere else, and that's what we in the unions have got to solve together.
Well, then keep it here in the United States and be willing to take a pay cut.
Well, as you know, we're discussing that with them, and they're not excited about it, but I think we're jointly going to reach a point of view that's good for both of us. We hope so.
I'd like to know why American Motors supports and promotes a foreign car, the Renault.
Okay.
Right.
Well, that's a good question, and I'd like to answer it. As it happens, Renault is a major stockholder in American Motors.
46%.
46%. We're going to take $200 million of Renault money that they've invested in our company and build a new car in Kenosha, Wisconsin, 100 miles up the road. That car will be built in the U.S. with U.S. workers, with over 75% U.S. content, and it's because of our association with Renault that we were able to generate that kind of capital to build the car here. They prefer to build their cars in the country where they're sold. Now, some lower volume cars, specialty cars like the Renault Fuego we talked about a minute ago, because they're a sports car, the volume doesn't justify building those in this country. But the bread and butter line will be built here, And that's why we're proud to be associated with Renault. They're a fine company.
And Renault is the 4th largest automobile manufacturer in the world. Is that right?
Correct. They build more front-wheel drive cars than anyone in the world. They build the best-selling front-wheel drive car in the world, the Renault car. They're a terrific company, high technology.
Yes.
We're proud to be associated.
But from the statement of your own predecessor upon the announcement of the Renault marriage with AMC, Renault could own more than 50% of American Motors common stock if it were to exercise its warrants and convert the other debt securities which it can acquire from American Motors. But Renault has not made plans to do so.
Correct.
So how realistic is it to expect Renault, the giant, to continue a relationship with American Motors without the danger of their taking over this company, and suddenly we've got French-speaking managers in what used to be an American automobile concern?
Well, all you can do is look at their track record. They own 20% of Mack Truck, for example, in this country. The president of Mack does not speak French. I can vouch for that. They own 25% of a robot company in this country. Their philosophy is to buy a stake in the company, be a shareholder, support that company, but not take over.
But
and their track record supports it.
Isn't it a little bit ironic? You know, you mention government ownership or control of business to an American businessman, and the blood drains from his face. What we've got here is an American company, and you're not alone in this, which in effect has decried the government, American government, on its back. And now in a financial squeeze, you had to, in an emergency situation, get ready cash, and you did it not only by getting the American government off your back, but by getting in bed with a company that's owned by the French government. This is a nationalized, Renault is it not a...
It is 100% essentially owned by the French government, as are many companies. Volkswagen is 60% owned by the German state and federal government. That's typical in Europe for their major automobile companies to be either wholly owned or importantly owned by the state. They operate just like a normal business would. They make profits. They have to earn their own investment. They don't get cash infusions from the government. They're run just like any other business would be run. The alternative course would be to go to the U.S. government for aid. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to solve our own problem. So we found a company that wanted to sell our Jeeps in Europe. We wanted to sell their front-wheel drive products in the U.S. We made a deal. We stayed out of the hand-holding ward in the U.S. government. We're going to make it. We're going to be a profitable company. We're going to be a successful company. And to me, that's the way to solve your problem. Solve them yourself, not go to the government for a solution.
Why not nationalize the automobile industry here?
Yeah.
Over Christmas, I was in Europe for about 3 weeks, and I was very interested to notice how few in number American-made cars are in Europe. If American-made cars are so much safer, so much more efficient, why don't even Americans support buying them, much less exporting them to Europe, whereas Europeans buy European-made cars?
Well, I think you will see more and more American-built cars sold in Europe, because now, before, let's say, 1979, the U.S. market was an unusual market. We wanted big cars. Fuel efficiency was not a major factor in designing the product. We wanted interior comfort and all that sort of thing. Now that we are building cars that are very similar to European cars or Japanese cars, the so-called world cars, they will be more competitive in world markets. And we'll be selling them directly against the Volkswagens and the Fiats and the British Leylands in Europe, because we now have products that are designed for narrow roads, high fuel costs. In Britain, for example, the cost of a gallon of gasoline is $3.50. You have to have a product designed for that kind of market. We now do, so you will see more American cars being sold over there.
What percentage of foreign-made steel do you use in your cars?
2%. A very modest amount.
Don't you think part of the problem is the attitude and the philosophy of the American people, maybe throughout the world, toward cars? We see them as social things rather than functional and using them strictly to get somewhere.
I think people use cars and have used cars to make a statement about themselves, just the way they use their houses and the way they dress and many other things. It's a personal way of expressing your attitude about things. There's no question about it. And I hope we never get back, frankly, to all driving Econo boxes. I think it's kind of dull to everybody driving the same kind of car.
Mr.
I know you'd
Tippett,
expect me to say that, by the way.
Mr. Tippett, the word is out that many people laid off in the automobile industry will not be rehired. Now, isn't it the responsibility of the industry to retrain these people, perhaps to find new ways of doing things, like alternative fuel and new devices for the automobile?
Yes, we've accepted responsibility in some of these areas. We're trying to do that in conjunction with state and local governments. Many state governments have vocational training programs, especially for laid-off workers. We're working with them to try and put together a total package for our people. We hope to hire them back.
You also have a guarantee and a warranty which is acknowledged to be by independent, non-prejudiced people the best in the business. You must be proud of that.
We are. We think we build better cars. We're the only automobile manufacturer in the U.S. to give a full warranty. All the other warranties are limited warranties. We're the only manufacturer to give a 5-year no rust-through warranty to this industry. We're the only manufacturer with what we call a buyer protection plan, which gives you a loaner car when you have your car serviced and lots of things. We think that's important these days.
And we'll be back in just a moment. Chairman Tippett is on the line. AMC, are you there?
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that I completely support Mr. Tippett's salary. Hopefully we're still living in a capitalistic society where we can respect a man of his stature instead of having him defend what he's making and where he's got. Those union people are not putting their jobs on the line every day. They have the union to back them while they may be out of work. A substantial part of them are drawing sub-benefits where they're not there. Yes, their standard of living has been cut, but not as to where that they're out completely without any job.
You're a proud capitalist.
Yes.
You believe in free enterprise.
I certainly do.
Does it make you... All right, for free enterprise. All right. Does it make you squeamish to realize that one of your most honored and respected companies, AMC, is now in partnership with a essentially socialized company, Renault? In other words, this audience is asking itself, why didn't we nationalize AMC and keep it right here?
Right.
Well, I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm saying, what's the...
That's business.
There are people here who want to know what's the difference. Well, all we're doing is going to Paris to get the job done.
I think I've got to answer that one.
The unions have taken over here.
Mr. Tippett's in on this.
Yeah. I've got to leave shortly. All major U.S. companies now have foreign partners. General Motors has a partnership with Suzuki and Isuzu. Ford has Toyota or Toyo Kogyo. Chrysler's with Mitsubishi and Peugeot, all of which own stakes in each other. The fact of the matter is no car company, no matter how big they are, can do it by themselves anymore. And it makes sense to have partners where your interests are complementary. Renault's going to sell Jeeps for us in Europe. That's a very good step for us.
Mr. Tippett, the terror of, and you're right, this question should be equally addressed to all your colleagues. This is not exclusive to you. Here's the terror, that you guys looked up, the building fell on you in a business sense. You said, holy cow, we got creditors, we're not selling cars, and you jump in bed with foreign nationalized auto companies, and you guys will all run to Florida with your condominiums and will be owned by everybody except Americans.
Wrong.
Isn't that scary?
This is just like the oil companies. You want to...
Well, first, I don't like I wish you'd use a different analogy than jumping into bed with the French, but as a matter of interest. But
you want the oil company...
Let him make his point. Just a second. Mr. Tippett.
The partnership we have with Renault is sound. They're a minority partner. We have 111,000 stockholders in our company. Renault is one of those 111,000. We have a responsibility to all 111,000. We get tremendous resources from them. They get resources from us. What is wrong with that? Every major car company in Europe is nationalized to one degree or another. If you have an association with a European car company, that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah, but you won't tolerate the nationalization in this country. All of you are together in your hysteria against that, yet we seem dangerously close to becoming that, only with a foreign connection.
Well, I submit beyond our ability, I think, to change the government of France. But the Renault system has worked very well. They're competitive, they make money, and they're run the way they should be.
Yeah.
Why does it take so much longer for an American car to be built than a Japanese? And why does it take so much longer to change the tooling?
Well, it doesn't take much longer to change the tooling. It takes about the same kind of length of time to make tooling. The fact of the matter is that the Japanese employ larger numbers of robots and other automation devices in their plants than we do, principally, not because they invented them. They're using robots made in the U.S. Understand that. So they don't have a technical edge on us, but their government, for example, permits them to write off all that new tooling in 2 to 3 years. gives them a very fast write-off on the tooling, so they can install new tooling on a much more economic basis than we can frequently. We must do it gradually. They can do it like that if it's designed for export. So they have more automation, they pay their workers less, and their workers are more productive. In many of our plants right now, we have what we call job classifications. A worker can do that job classification, period. He can run that machine. In a Japanese plant, a worker can have 5 job classifications. He can run the machine, fix the machine, plug it in, do preventive maintenance, and all those kinds of things in the same workstation.
And you're saying the union makes it difficult for you?
That has traditionally been the union position, and we're working with them to change it. And they are being responsive with us.
And
we'll be knocking them, but that's the fact.
We'll be back in just a moment. With time running out, let's get this in, that the car about which Mr. Tippett feels very proud is the Alliance. Kenosha, Wisconsin will manufacture the Alliance. If you don't make it, we don't make it. I hope whatever else...
Services provided and promotional fees paid by the following: